Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the greatest spectacle of corporate self-sabotage, the new Coke debacle of 1985. Gather round as we relive the glory days of Coca-Cola's epic descent into madness, where they decided to take America's most beloved beverage and perform an unholy science experiment on it. And oh, did it cost them? A casual $30 million in development and marketing, or as I like to call it, a hot, steaming pile of shareholder cash set ablaze for our entertainment. Now imagine this. You're Coca-Cola, sitting on top of the world, smugly basking in your dominance with a 60% market share. Life is good, right? Wrong. Because who wouldn't want to mess with perfection for a chance to plummet to a 12% drop in stock prices within just a few months? Just think of it as a strategy to keep things interesting, like playing Russian roulette with a loaded branding gun. The sheer brilliance of this operation lies in its simplicity. Step 1. Take a product that's adored worldwide. Step 2. Change it completely, because why not? It's like deciding to repaint the Mona Lisa, but with finger paints. But fear not. Coke had a plan. A plan to spend more than $4 million in marketing research, a number that in 1985 could probably buy you a small island or at least pay the therapy bills for the marketing team post-blunder. And let's not forget the $50 million set on fire for advertising this Frankenstein's soda. Yes, $50 million. That's enough money to make even the most cynical ad exec squeal with delight or cringe with existential dread, depending on how much they value job security. They unleashed a campaign so massive, it was like they were launching a new flavor of oxygen. But hold on, folks, because it gets better. Coke was so sure of their masterstroke that they didn't just test the waters. They cannonballed into the shallow end of the pool, confident as ever, armed with the results from taste tests favoring new Coke over Pepsi and the original formula. Ah yes, nothing screams reliable like convincing a panel of taste testers that more sugar and less caramel is what their hearts truly desire. Or maybe they just forgot to mention that participants were actually wired with a beverage bias shock collar. Who can say? And while we're on the subject of confidence, let's talk about the decision to cease production of the original Coke altogether. The sheer audacity. It's like if Shakespeare decided mid-Hamlet that Danish prince dramas were out and launched a sitcom about Viking sitcom writers instead. So of course the people spoke. And by spoke, I mean they rioted. Well, polite 1980s riots involving angry phone calls and strongly worded letters. Call it nostalgia with a vengeance. Over 400,000 phone calls, to be precise. It's hard to imagine the switchboard operators weren't rolling their eyes so hard they needed chiropractors. Poor Pepsi, sitting on the sidelines, watching Coca-Cola self-destruct. They probably debated sending Coke a fruit basket or a thank you card. For a brief, beautiful moment, Pepsi owned the cola wars without lifting a finger, well, other than to dial up their competitors and ask if they could spare any fiery marketing dollars. Yes, new Coke was the biggest lesson in, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, since the invention of the wheel. But let's give credit where it's due. Within 79 days, the prodigal son returned. Coca-Cola Classic rose like a phoenix from the ashes of public outrage, restoring order to the universe and the original formula to grocery store shelves. In conclusion, Coca-Cola's new Coke fiasco was a masterclass in assuming you know better than your customers, with just a hint of corporate hubris and a dollop of blind optimism. And $34 million later, to make or break or mock depending on your viewpoint, Coke learned a lesson about the sanctity of tradition, the danger of tampering with icons, and perhaps most importantly, that if you're going to burn truckloads of cash, at least roast some marshmallows while you're at it. So raise your cans, America, to new Coke. May it forever be a cautionary tale for any company tempted to innovate by reversing a century's worth of perfection. Cheers. In the spring of 1985, as the cherry blossoms bloomed and the optimistic sunlight painted everything in hues of hope, the Coca-Cola Company pulled the sheet off its latest innovation, New Coke. It was a heralded moment, the kind that executives dream of. With a reformulated recipe meant to launch the company into a new era of sugary supremacy, the expectation was high. The company had invested millions in development, taste tests, and marketing campaigns. They had conjured up a future of burgeoning sales, imagining their profits soaring like the fizz that danced to the surface of a freshly poured glass. But in the realm of reality, that imagined future unraveled faster than a sugar rush crash. Within days of the launch, the buzz was not the celebratory kind. It was more of a droning collective groan from a nation betrayed. Phone lines at Coca-Cola headquarters lit up like Christmas trees, inundated with calls of outrage. People were not just displeased, they were furious. Expected growth had been projected at a robust 10% increase in market share. Instead, sales took an unanticipated nosedive, plummeting by 20% almost overnight. It was as if the momentum of the company's red and white empire had been stopped by an invisible wall of public disdain. Coca-Cola had naively expected the nation to embrace New Coke as their new favorite sugary companion. Instead, Americans took to the streets in a beverage-fueled rebellion. From Atlanta to Anchorage, cans of New Coke were poured down drains, dumped in trash bins, or used as props in satirical street theater. It was a spectacle of dissatisfaction on a grand scale. Enraged loyalists mourned the loss of their beloved original flavor as if a good friend had been snatched away by some sugary reaper. In the digital ether, even though social media was nothing like the viral behemoth it would become decades later, theoretical metrics painted a grim picture. Had Twitter existed, the hashtag #BringBackOldCoke would have trended worldwide, amassing millions of tweets steeped in vitriol. The hypothetical number of negative tweets would have easily surpassed 100,000 within the first week, while the YouTube videos chronicling the taste test failures would have seen a dislike ratio upwards of 80%. A modern-day social media storm would have raged across platforms, with digital Coke riots as bloggers and commentators united under a banner of nostalgia and disappointment. Back in the world of retail, the shelves began to tell their own story. Supermarkets and gas stations witnessed a curious phenomenon. Stocks of original Coke, now rebranded as Coca-Cola Classic in some corners, were hoarded and mercilessly cleared out by frantic shoppers. Those who doubted the idea of beverage panic buying were quickly corrected. The memory of the original flavor became a shared cultural grievance uniting diverse groups in their collective sense of loss. The company's forecasting models had predicted an upswing, a shift in consumer palate as inevitable as the tides. Instead, they faced a tide of public backlash that left them struggling to stay afloat. The anticipated 10% increase in growth now glared back as a stark 20% plunge in market share. Bottlers reported back with grim faces, the numbers etched into their ledgers revealing the truth. Consumers had turned their back on New Coke with an intensity that the company had neither anticipated nor prepared for. Boardrooms at Coca-Cola were consumed with damage control, and executives found themselves facing the daunting task of not just explaining the shortfall to shareholders, but grappling with the broader implications of their misstep. They had thought they were delivering an evolution, but the public saw it as an unnecessary revolution, a revolution they didn't ask for, and one they certainly didn't want. Focus groups and consumer interviews painted a portrait of disconnected executives, holding their heads in their hands, wondering where it all went wrong. The Coca-Cola team pondered the gap between their meticulous planning and the harsh verdict of reality. The taste tests that had promised triumph, the charts showing growth curves steep enough to climb, seemed like distant dreams as they faced the cold, carbonated truth. It was a pivotal moment not just for Coca-Cola, but for the corporate world at large, a cautionary tale of what happens when a company loses touch with its core consumers. It was a lesson written in the ink of plummeting sales and the roar of public opinion, a lesson that would resonate through boardrooms for decades to come. As the days became weeks and the weeks turned into months, the company began to comprehend the magnitude of its miscalculation. Coca-Cola learned, somewhat ironically, that change for the sake of change is as bitter as cola gone flat. They had slipped on a proverbial banana peel, one of their own making, and now faced the unenviable task of winning back the world's soda-loving hearts. The new Coke disaster, it turned out, was not just a bump in the road. It was a full-on collision with the wall of consumer loyalty and preference. They had intended to pop the champagne, but instead they were left mopping up the spills of a fizzled launch. Picture, if you will, the bustling boardrooms of Coca-Cola in 1985, where executives are pacing back and forth like a group of highly caffeinated hamsters. The reason is the epic fallout from New Coke, a debacle that wiped out a staggering $9 billion in market capitalization. A bottom-line bloodbath that sent waves of shock and awe through Wall Street and the soft drink-consuming populace alike. You see, New Coke was like a blind date set up by your mother, full of hope, but ending in a cocktail of disappointment and unfounded optimism. When Coca-Cola decided to retire its 99-year-old flagship product in favor of a sweeter, supposedly more market-savvy formula, they didn't just miss the mark. They took the mark, pinned it to a dartboard, blindfolded themselves, spun around, and lobbed a shot that landed 2 doors down at a Pepsi taste test. For a brief, surreal moment, New Coke appeared to be a success, boasting a few short-lived sales spikes. But the initial buzz quickly fizzled out faster than a flat soda, and the backlash was monumental. Coca-Cola fans, who had been loyal to the brand through thick and thin, felt both betrayed and belittled. Never underestimate the power of public nostalgia and the consumer's right to cling to their comfort beverages with the fervor of a koala hugging a eucalyptus tree. In the meantime, Pepsi must have been somewhere in a dark room, lifting a glass in smug jubilation. While Coca-Cola was busy navigating their self-inflicted PR nightmare, Pepsi gleefully ramped up its Pepsi Challenge campaign, reinforcing their narrative of being the more preferred taste. It was like watching your ex trip over their own shoelaces during a date with the one they told you not to worry about. Coca-Cola's response was to swiftly bring back the original formula under the guise of Coca-Cola Classic. Yet, it soon became evident that they had dug a hole so deep, even the most optimistic rope ladder couldn't reach the top. The damage to the brand's reputation was severe, and it was estimated to take nearly a decade before Coca-Cola could fully recover the trust and loyalty it had once enjoyed. The irony? New Coke's demise led to a resurgence in Coca-Cola Classic sales that eventually surpassed previous figures, proving that sometimes you have to burn down your house to light up the neighborhood. As for the leadership, CEO Roberto Goizueta was king in a castle built on fizz. While he wasn't ousted, he certainly took his fair share of the heat, much like a cook who forgot to turn off the burner during a high-profile dinner party. He eventually received a severance package so generous it could make a career politician blush. Think of it as a parting gift for accidentally detonating the soda industry's equivalent of a nuclear bomb. The lesson here was more expensive than a fleet of yachts filled with gold-plated caviar. Coca-Cola's attempt to fix what wasn't broken, by tinkering with a formula that was less of a recipe and more of a cultural artifact, became a cautionary tale of corporate hubris. It was a reminder that not all innovation is progress, especially when your customer base treats their cola as reverently as they do their morning coffee. Still, the New Coke fiasco wasn't all for naught. It served as a masterclass in brand management, demonstrating the power of consumer loyalty and preference. Coca-Cola, albeit singed, emerged with a renewed focus on listening to its consumers. It was a lesson so costly and public that it should be mandatory reading for any ambitious executive with a penchant for unnecessary risk-taking. In the end, New Coke became the blunder that defined an era, a beverage blip that served as a testament to the power of tradition over trend. It was a lesson in humility, albeit priced at a whopping $9 billion, and a reminder that the customer isn't just always right. They're also armed with the emotional attachment of 1,000 teapots. So, as the dust finally settled and Coca-Cola Classic reclaimed its rightful place, America collectively took a sigh of relief. The return to the original formula proved that sometimes all it takes is a colossal misstep to appreciate the sweet, carbonated comfort of the status quo. And as for Coca-Cola, they learned that some things, like baseball, apple pie, and their century-old soda, should remain untouched by the fickle finger of innovation.